So hi, how are you?
Great. Thanks everyone for having me. It's a pleasure to be in the room with so many founders.
Yeah, so thank you again for being here. Really looking forward to our conversation. Would you like to present yourself and give a few words about you and Insight?
Of course. Donnie Aronovitz, I'm a managing director at Insight Partners. Been with the firm for 10 years. We're a global software investor, investing for 30 years and currently investing out of our Fund 13, which is about $13 billion. I opened the office here for Insight 5 years ago, opening the office in Tel Aviv and really starting to expand our footprint across Israel and bringing Insight earlier stage, as we were known as a growth investor for many years.
Perfect. So again, thank you for being here and also being in Israel, not taken for granted. So let's start. I will dive in with the first question. How has your investment focus changed in the last 2 years due to AI? You know, you had ChatGPT moment, everything has changed, as Rana said. And from your perspective, you know, you see many companies, the top talent of the companies. What has changed in the last 2 years?
It's a great question. We see almost every software company globally. Software has been really the focus for Insight for 30 years. So we're recognizing a real moment of transition, a real revolution underway. And we believe that venture capitalists, just like everyone else, need to adjust and adapt to the current world. And so what we're seeing today is a mix. We're still continuing to invest in traditional software companies. You don't have to be an AI native company to still get funding. Of course, we're seeing a surge in AI native funding and generative AI funding, but we still very much believe in the world of software and the ability to incorporate AI, if you're even a traditional software company, is the critical point. So what we're looking for now is just kind of big moats, big disruptive type of opportunities that we feel have not just a few month head start on potential competition, but have, you know, real durable 2 to 3 year periods of time that's generally driven by the data moat with the feedback loops that you have, which can reinforce the kind of strength of your product. And what we're doing now is kind of investing in a mix of both the AI infrastructure as well as the kind of application layer. We, you know, in Israel, we've been investing quite heavily across all stages from seed through growth. And what we've seen is that there's just a tremendous surge of AI application companies coming out of Israel. I would say there's obviously 2 big ones that everyone knows really well on the platform side, you know, with Ilya building and we have AI 21. Those obviously are still trying to work their way to being one of the front runners. But I would say that Israel has a really good reputation over the years of kind of taking a look at what's happening in the market, adjusting accordingly, and it's okay not to be in the first wave of those big AI platform models. And there's going to still be a tremendous amount of opportunity for all of you in the room and the next generation of founders to come in and iterate on what's already out there and still probably have a good chance at being one of the dominant geographies in the world in AI.
Perfect. So really interesting insight. You mentioned before that you are investing in companies that doing AI but not doing AI also. And this is my next question. How it's important for you as a part of the due diligence maybe to see if the company use AI, not use it? This is some barrier, or this is something that you will be able to invest even if a company, for God's sake, why don't use AI?
So it's one of the core parts of our diligence. These days, what we're doing is very similar to what we have over the years. We obviously do a lot of market work, customer work, but we want to make sure that the product roadmaps of the companies that we're investing in have some sort of AI as part of that roadmap. And that could be incorporating it into the actual infrastructure. It could be incorporating it into the customer success and sales functions, which we're seeing is obviously one of the first use cases that's really taking off and seeing success. But of course, you know, I think more and more, even our own portfolio companies, and we have about 800 companies that we've invested in, so pretty big vantage point, about 100 companies here in Israel, which we're very proud of. And what we see is that there's a tremendous amount of adoption of the coding solutions, and you have to be careful at the same time. You want to make sure that you're really reviewing carefully what's actually being generated by code. But I think in general, we need to see that there's a tremendous amount of thoughtfulness as it relates to AI incorporated in either the infrastructure, through the coding generation, through other means in sales and customer success, and generally just having a good understanding of how AI could potentially be a killer for your company. And if you're not using it the right way, if you're not leveraging it appropriately, your competitors probably are, and it's going to be something that you can't come back from. So you have to make sure that early on it's in your mindset, it's in your roadmap. But again, I want to go back to that point that you don't have to be an AI native company. There's very much still an opportunity outside of AI. You just need to incorporate it if you really want to thrive and stay ahead of your competition.
Really interesting. You see, some of your companies in your portfolio maybe hesitated to use AI. Have you seen that from entrepreneur or founders say, you know what, it looks promising, but not yet, not for us? Have you seen such of behavior?
Absolutely. We just actually last week we had a forum here in Israel, go-to-market focused, talking about how everyone in the portfolio is leveraging AI. So we had the CEO leaders, the CROs, CMOs there, and it was eye-opening to see some really great ideas and some really good roundtable discussions about how to sharing the knowledge that people have had success with already leveraging AI. But there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty, and there's still a lot of companies that are on the forefront of innovation that are doing very well, that really are at the beginning stages of implementing AI. So even the best of the best, the companies that have hit scale and are growing really nicely, they know that there's still threats out there, and they're very much keeping their eyes open and understanding how could we maintain this edge, this barrier that we have. And part of that is going to be through the community here in Israel, which is very close and tight-knit, sharing those learnings with each other, understanding what's actually adding value. And it's really a good idea to experiment and then kind of iterate, talk to your peer set, and try to understand what are the themes, what are the common benefits and advantages that my competitors, my peers are seeing, and try to replicate that as you're going forward and building.
Fascinating. It's really interesting to see that even in big companies, as you said, in growth, still need to understand how they can use AI, because their competitors, maybe a bootstrap, maybe seed company, will use AI to try to take some bite of their businesses. So you can never rest. So this leads me to the next question about moat. This is one of the top main questions. Many people are asking about that. So what is perspective on moats? About data moats, model moat, maybe talent moat, if you can consider it as a moat. I would be happy to hear your thought about that, and how do you see companies that comes to you in the early days of their work? If you are looking for a moat, or maybe you say you don't need that, so I'll be happy to hear your thought about that.
So there's ways that we look at it differently. So in terms of AI infrastructure, generally those are deeper technologies. You have the ability to kind of have a faster head start than your traditional application AI company. If you're in applied AI to a specific vertical, I think moat is even more critical, because you're going to have that data set that's unique. You're going to have, again, the feedback loops from running the models and trying to just continue to iterate and get better. But generally, what we are interested in is both, because we see a tremendous amount of opportunity in the infrastructure layer. We are generally oriented towards deeper tech. Those often already have a lot more.
When you say infrastructure, literally mean GPUs, hardware, networking, stuff like that?
So I'm actually talking about the tooling around AI. So good example, out of Israel, we backed 2 early AI infrastructure companies that were acquired by NVIDIA, RunAI and Deci. And so we are not necessarily big investors on the GPU side or in the hardware front and the semis. What we're looking for is really the AI tooling to enable AI to accelerate and for more people to get kind of advancements and benefit from AI. So in the case of RunAI, optimizing the GPU usage and capacity was very critical early on, especially when there was constraints around GPUs and there was inflation going on in the world. So those were real tailwinds for RunAI and ultimately what drove a lot of their success. And then you think about Deci, there was just an announcement that NVIDIA is actually leveraging Deci quite significantly in their product roadmap and their marketing as they start to compress large language models. So we're really focused on, the AI tooling when it relates to the infrastructure. And then on the application side, we think that's where a lot of the value will accrue. So there's no doubt that obviously infrastructure is going to be a lot of dollars that are flowing there, and there's going to be some big winners. But when you just think about the quantity of companies that are going to see success, a lot of those are going to be in the application layer and vertical specific AI focused companies. And we're seeing a tremendous amount of opportunity there in Israel. And I would say in the last 2 years, we've invested in about 12 different AI companies, a couple of those being on the infrastructure, but many of those applied AI into specific verticals.
Oh, really, really interesting. And that leads me to the next question. You said about, companies who build products, application, and now we see a new phenomenon that really bootstrap tiny startups. One person, Mauro Shlomo, will speak at this event later on, or maybe some startups with 4 or 5 people that are starting to increase their ARR, starting to get more share cut. So what is your perspective on that? And side note, what do you think about the future of VCs in companies like that maybe don't have to raise tons of money, maybe they can run as bootstrap as they wish?
So first note, I have a tremendous respect for Moer. We actually backed his previous company, Explorium, and what he's doing, and it's obviously eye-opening for not just Israelis, but really I think a lot of the world is watching and leveraging and getting a lot of excitement, maybe even kind of experimenting with some of their children that are very young and putting out prompts and seeing what comes through. So generally, and this is going to sound weird from a venture capitalist, but we believe that it's probably best for you to raise money as late as possible into your early journey.
Late as possible.
As late as possible. And I can't tell you, this wasn't the case 2-3 years ago, but in the last 6 months, we've met dozens of companies out of Israel that are 3 to 10 employees and have multi-million ARR already kind of being generated. In some cases, they're profitable from their first contract. And it's very beneficial. Obviously, early on, you're going to take significant dilution. So if you could push that off, I think it's definitely beneficial. And we're going to see a lot more companies that have the ability to get to scale with very few resources. And so it allows you to actually not go to the markets in the seed or the pre-seed and just maybe wait it out until you gain some scale and can raise a nice sizable round. But the pressure is sort of on because investors are now meeting companies, and if you went from 1 to 3 million in 12 months, that used to sound very impressive, but now there's so many stories out there of companies that have been able to do much faster growth with much more limited resources. So I think the bar is changing. The level of funding that you need to get off the ground has very much moved. And over time, there might be a lot of dollars that come in, but I suspect that these will be in later stages. And we're already seeing it. You saw some of the slides that previous presenters showed, but there's a tale of two markets, non-AI and AI. The round sizes are much larger for AI companies. And generally, those are happening at later stages, because the valuations are obviously very, very large, and it's a good opportunity for founders to hold on to more of their company, and when they need to go out and actually raise that round to really scale up, go to market, they have the resources available because they might own 50% or 100%, depending how many founders. You have a lot more wiggle room to negotiate, and given the valuations and where they are, and we're seeing quite an inflated level of valuations in the AI world, you're going to be really well off and probably holding on to more of your company than you were, for the 10 years ago when you built a business and even had the chance to take it to IPO or exit. So I think the future is very bright for founders. It's a great time to be building. Obviously, things are moving very fast. It's hard to keep up on a daily basis, but there's a lot of benefit with all of the advancements. And I think for founders, it's going to be something that we look back on, and there's going to be a lot of appreciation for the fact that you could hold on to more of your baby and company for a lot longer, and bring in the right partners, when they're really needed, and maybe even skip over some of the early stage investors that were needed and are still needed for certain companies, but don't necessarily, have to be there anymore, to really get things off the ground.
Yeah, keep your equity, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So that leads me to another question. Talking about the future a little bit. So what do you think about the global market and how AI is going to change it? And also, what do you think about the local ecosystem here in Israel? You've seen a lot of startups who've been here for quite time. So what do you think on general perspective, but also what Israeli maybe have some opportunities in?
So it's something that I try to impart on everyone I talk with in Israel. We come from the US, we have a great understanding globally of opportunities, and sometimes when you're in Israel, you might be, a little bit focused on what's happening here, and you might have a blind spot. And, what we see is just incredible performance from our Israeli founders. And obviously in the midst of the last couple of years, through the adversity, is really something that's been stunning for my firm in particular, just to see the sheer performance of our Israeli companies, in many cases outperforming the US and other regions. We have more conviction than ever in founders like you to invest here, and you're seeing many international funds follow suit. Obviously there is a lot of good investors here in the kind of 2010 to 2017, 2018 timeframe. Some of them left, but many of them have returned, and we're very proud to have come here in 2019. We think we timed it very well, and I think it's a good evidence that you're all doing something very, very serious for the advancements of the world in a variety of industries. So, just to give you a little glimpse, we invest, primarily in software, but that touches many different verticals. Healthcare, especially applied AI in healthcare, has been a tremendous area of advancements that we've seen and that we've invested around. Obviously, defense tech, it continues to grow here, and AI is becoming a big part of that. So we see just the constant, evolution of this ecosystem. Cybersecurity, of course, has been dominant over the years. We've done very well here backing cyber founders, but we're seeing a real diversification away from cyber. Not that cyber is not continuing to churn out really good, companies and great success stories. That's definitely the case, and that will continue to be the case. But it's very healthy that there's a diversification underway across a variety of verticals, and we're very much focused on trying to expand the portfolio, not just focus on cybersecurity and infrastructure software, but look at other areas where AI could really move the needle. And we see a tremendous amount of that opportunity here in Israel. So I think you're in a really good place for international dollars to back you when you're ready, not necessarily, again, in the early stages, but you should be very proud of your country and your peers, and we certainly are going to be here for a long time, continuing to back all of you.
Thank you. It's amazing. Thank you for the support. And we have last 2 minutes. Anything you would like to share with this audience about how to reach to Insight, or what you specifically look in? If some of the entrepreneurs would like to just have some time, just go ahead.
Absolutely. So we generally, you might have already been hearing from us, we are very proactive with how we source opportunities. We have many investors in the US that I collaborate closely with that are constantly speaking to the market, building relationships with founders, and surfacing those opportunities to folks like me when it's ready to actually move forward and there's an actionable opportunity. So please, I would say, give the time to the investors that you think could actually be additive. It's sometimes daunting to continue relationships with investors over a long period of time, even when you know that it might be something that you're not ready to kind of work with. But those relationships many times could take 2-3 years, but you never know when that will turn around for your benefit. And so I think in general, even though I mentioned, keep your head down, focus on building, don't bring on, investors early on, it is good to have those relationships in place and to kind of just get the market buzzing about what you're building. And, it could be very organic, like with what Maor is doing. But ultimately, there's, I think going to be a benefit for you as a founder to have those relationships in place. And, once you're actually ready to raise those funds, to have that existing knowledge and understanding of what you're doing, who this partner is, why they could be beneficial to your company. Those are key areas that I would kind of think about as a founder. And just last words, parting wise, I think we see many times now this inclination that you have to go out and maybe think about a new space that's under optimized, and it's great to have that intellectual curiosity and want to solve a problem. But what we look for as investors most often is really that domain specific knowledge. So if you do have a particular discipline and an area of expertise, and you can go into that category and build into that category, I think you'll probably be more likely to get investor interest, because we oftentimes obviously want to back the founders that have that founder product fit or founder market fit, and you might have a higher success rate if you build in those areas.
Thank you. Thank you again for your time. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.